you've got to actually be comfortable in your existing zone in order to get out of the comfort zone.
And then soon enough, you'll be eating mackerel.
Crap, hey, here's where you're going to speak. Here's your microphone. Here's what the auditorium looks like. Here's what acoustics are. Here's air conditioning. Hi, my name is Jody McNamer, otherwise known as Tyler's dad.
And my name is Tyler McNamer, also known as Jody's son.
Yeah, and welcome to Population 1 online, also known as Questions About Autism, Answers That Work. Thanks for being part of our community. We really, really appreciate that. Our goal really every week and throughout the week is to provide instructions, programming that help you make autism more workable. And I think we got a great topic for today.
Absolutely. I'm actually really excited to get started in this topic. And this is kind of like the gist of the main theme of what goes on for both Population 1 and Becoming 1. A couple of my books that I've been selling. And that is about out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. So, comfort zone, it's interesting. No matter whether you are affected by autism or not, I believe that we all have a challenge of challenging ourselves or getting ourselves out of the comfort zone. We as human beings we like stasis, and oftentimes people say, well, stasis is just hanging out on the couch, playing it safe. But the reality of it is that the more that we can challenge ourselves, the richer our lives can be. And especially for our children or our young adults or adults on the spectrum, their worlds can become very, very, very small if they don't challenge themselves and really get out of their comfort zone. So maybe, let's talk a little bit about that, right? About how do you define kind of a comfort zone in terms of autism?
So in the topic of autism, it is not just for those that have autism that has to go through the comfort zones. It also happens to be with the parents that handle kids with autism. Eventually, there's going to be some comfort zones that's going to be broken eventually.
That's a good point.
So if you think of it that way, but think of it in terms of this strategy is not working. Let's try this, and this new strategy can be terrifying.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, because again, we're trying to expose, and if you've listened to other programs, we've talked about how we have to work to desensitize our children so that they have the ability to take in more sensory in their environment, because then that ultimately, once they can handle that higher level of sensory input, then it really opens up the pathways to learning. But until that happens, and oftentimes, right, that process of desensitizing, it does, for parents, man, it's just easier to take the path of least resistance, right? But it's not necessarily the best to take the path of least resistance, especially as it comes to challenging our children in good sensory situations or higher level sensory situations, as well.
Or even trying out new foods as a comfort zone.
Yeah. Getting into the food fight, which we don't want. There's programs specifically around food as well. Don't fight over food, no doubt, because that's a challenge that I just don't think anyone wins.
That's for sure. There's this cookbook I remember reading. I think my mom still has it. It's called "One Bite Won't Kill You."
Yeah.
It even has like this illustration of this funny situation of, oh no, what's mom cooking up today? But this was kind of like one of those examples of getting out of your comfort zone, of trying new foods. And we can go on and on about the topic of food, but this is one of the main examples of out of your comfort zone, trying new things, and what's good for you, in terms of food and nutrition, like so. So that's just one of the examples for that. And in terms for food with taste buds, we mentioned before about the other sensories such as hearing, touch, smell, and sight.
Yeah. So let's talk about food, right? Because I mean, this is a sensitive topic. So how do parents help their children get out of their comfort zone when it comes to food? I mean, you ate 6 things for the first 12 years of your life, right? And so we clearly didn't do a very good job of that. So yeah, help us understand what we could have done, to be able to help you challenge yourself in that area.
Well, there are some areas, even thinking back, I was thinking, oh man, I guess hamburgers aren't as bad as I thought. So that's like my new favorite food next to hot dogs and sushi. So so I would so if I were in that situation, I just go with the textures that are very similar, going from chicken nuggets to chicken strips. It's still chicken, but it's not nuggets. It's strips, and it's a little different. And then going from chicken strips to fish sticks, same similar texture, but definitely tastes a bit different too. So if you look at that, it's kind of like leveling up your food choices for those kind of areas as well. And then also same with sushi. I mean, there's for any sushi goers out there, you can tell that there's a lot of varieties now it comes up too. So if you look in terms of that, start small with vegetarian, then move your way up to the meats, and then soon enough you'll be eating mackerel.
Well, so what I'm hearing, right, is that we want to take the foods that your children are actually eating, right? And we want to take a look at how do they smell? How do they taste? What are the texture like? What's the temperature like? And then find like foods that are just slightly different, right? But at least in the same kind of texture, taste, smell range. And then again, it's kind of like you just make these slight adjustments, and then that expands the number of foods that they'll eat.
Expands the number of foods, and then by choice for people with autism, this is where in terms of foods they chose to get out of their comfort zones and try brand new things. It's things that they haven't tried before. At least try it once, and then if you don't like it, well, then you don't like it. It's
right.
It's like you just never know unless you give it a try. It's like, hey, you like cheese pizza? Try pepperoni pizza. That's
because it still has a cheese base, but it's the addition of one additional thing.
Yeah, well, with one additional thing, and then maybe level up to a combination pizza with olives and mushrooms and green peppers and all the other toppings out there too, pineapple, and so these slight adjustments to these kind of things too. Think of it in terms of like level 1, and then go up to level 2 and level 3, that's that kind of thing too. And eventually you'll get up to the highest level, and that's when you find the breakthrough of breaking out of your comfort zones, of trying new things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So good coaching, in that as well. And again, realize that this doesn't happen overnight, right? It takes time in order for this to happen. So you're just introducing little things. And again, watching for those triggers, too. You don't want to definitely make it a fight, but it sounds like really kind of even making it an adventure or a game, something that they can relate to. And every child's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can be for food. It can also be for recreational entertainment. That's because I remember going back to when it comes to sensory and stuff too, getting out of your comfort zone. When most folks think of the arcades, they think of bright lights, entertainment, video games, and a lot of people enjoy those kind of places. However, some folks with autism, it can be a disaster because you got bright lights, loud noises, and people banging against each other, and maybe it's too crowded, and the pinball machines. Oh my goodness, the pinball machines are the worst, or were the worst anyway too, because it's just all nothing but chaos. And
Right. Yeah.
and sometimes that can be kind of hard. So what do? Back to level 1. Maybe there are folks with autism that still enjoy video games, and I'd say that level 1 happens to be playing video games at home. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like you can still. It still kind of has a fancy graphics and the gameplay and all that kind of stuff. The only difference is that it's it's not crowded and you can turn down the volume for that kind of thing. So level 1, then level 2, you can just try to one up by choice if you want to go to an arcade, or we actually know a few places where there's arcades, but they're a lot quieter, not constant too, especially for adults too.
Maybe there's one machine or two machines.
Yeah, exactly, like a pizza place, or it's that's one machine, two machines, and then level 2, work your way up, and then soon you'll be going to into those loud, chaotic places, and become the video game champion or something like that.
Well, and I think
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So again, really, really concentrating on sensory when it comes to new experiences. Oftentimes, why these experiences fail out of the comfort zone is because they just are too dramatic of a shift. And there's really, our children or young adults or adults just don't have files to be able to deal with that. They don't have context. One of the things we also found too was, before we would embark on, hey, we are going to the pizza place, we would definitely map everything out. We would explain, and oftentimes we would draw out what was going to happen, because visual, being able to actually see it, being actually able to see the environment, maybe even just a map of what the restaurant looks like, or where you're going to walk, or, hey, here's the car that's driving, and this is what we're going to pass, along the way.
Yep, a map, an action plan kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Think of it in terms of, slightly still on the topic of video games. It's like gotta plan your stage of attack when you're taking over the base or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
It's if you kind of and I mean, sure, it's there's a lot of strategy involved, but for us, we always like to make it fun and not too not tedious, but not too. What's the word? Try not to take it too seriously.
Over the top, yeah. It just becomes, where it's too much, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because that process in and of itself can be overwhelming and out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you start developing kind of healthy patterns to say, hey, we are going to walk through. I've seen a lot of parents where they just have not done a proper job preparing their child for what this experience is going to be. Like even at school, changing schools, that was a process in and of itself. We literally worked a year in advance, making sure that Tyler was able to tour the new school, especially as he transitioned from elementary into middle school, able to tour the schools, able to get adjusted to the sound of the ringing of the bell for the changing of classrooms, just the hustle and bustle, exposing him to that in little doses where there's just all the mingling in the hall. That prep work is essential to be able to not only desensitize, but to also help our children become familiar with those surroundings, as well.
Sure,
so tell us about what that experience was like for you, and how that really kind of pulled you out of your comfort zone. And there were some real wins, but there was also some real challenges in that process too.
Absolutely. So it was the best idea to tour around the new school, for these kind of things. A lot of kids, well, just about every kid out there, they kind of figure out as they go, but I kind of needed just a bit of a fresh head start. That way everyone else can still keep up and all that kind of stuff too. That way, it's not a race or anything like that to get familiarized with the school or anything like that. It's just kind of more what to expect, and especially like with the clock, the bell rings at this time. So I basically constantly keep looking at the clock,
right? Because it was going to go off.
Yeah, then then I do this.
Yeah,
it's kind of stuff, and I did that for, I don't know, probably a couple of weeks, maybe the first month. But then the more I kind of hear the bell, the less it was not as noisy as I thought it would be too. So I kind of got used to that, and it's out of the comfort zone, and I was like, all right, this is familiar. So I got used to it.
Yeah, and I think that's again just essential. You think about that. Just the ringing of the bell and anticipating the ringing of the bell, right? That even for the first month, then would take away from concentration of schoolwork or being able to acclimate to the classroom. I mean, it was just a lot. And so just expect that, right? It's not going to happen overnight. Things that, maybe come naturally for, those that aren't affected, by autism, they just don't, because again, of this really heightened level of sensory and taking all of that in. And it just means that, the comfort zone can be expanded. There's no question about it. It just takes a little bit longer, a little bit more prep work in order to have that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what it is for every time we go for one school to the next. And even for first and second grade, I had the same teacher for both grades, and switching from that to third grades where he was a male teacher this time, that was it was I wouldn't say it caused a meltdown. It was just more of a what's going on here.
It was tough. Yeah.
It's like it was tough. I'm like the new class and location, and there's a bunch of airplanes everywhere, which worked for me because I still enjoy aviation, but but it was different, confusing, I guess. Nothing too warning or something like that. It was just kind of more of a lost kind of feel, I guess you can say, too. Which I've seen a lot of folks with autism. It's when they're out of their comfort zone and just wandering around without any meltdown, it ultimately became the feeling of lost. I would argue saying that it's better to feel lost than to have a meltdown, because when you're lost, you can always ask for advice. It's like, where do I go next? What do I do next? And it's good. So if anyone out there is feeling that way, it's okay. It's a natural thing, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. You can always reach out for help. And that's you should always praise yourself for getting out of your comfort zone, and with this new exciting yet terrifying new experience, just go easy, be light for these kind of situations, and that eventually this new thing can become very comforting the more you practice on it.
Yeah, very, very good point. So what are some other areas that you think that children, young adults that have autism, what are other areas that they really would benefit them to challenge themselves and get out of their comfort zone?
Sure. So not an overnight thing, of course. It can take days or weeks or months or even years to find the final level, and as to have the ability to choose of getting out of your comfort zone, and to actually embrace the idea of trying new things. There are some ants. It's always important to, number one, keep in mind that there's things that you may not enjoy as much, and that's okay. It's like try going to a football game, for example, American football, and you might like it, or you may not enjoy it so much because it's too chaotic, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. That's just your personal take. So, with autism, the topic of autism, everyone is so different. It's like some folks are sensitive towards some things, others are not so much. But never know unless you give it a try. And even when you're a grown adult, so there are some areas where you gotta check in with yourself and to be sure to challenge everything, but do it in a way that's in a healthy kind
It's
of
still
manner.
safe, yeah.
It's still safe, healthy. kind of manner.
So how did you get to that point? Because I think this is a really, really powerful point to, because this is one of the keys and steps to independence. And this is a big thing inside of Autismworks, right? Is our goal is, to really help parents find a way to help their children gain that independence by leveraging their unique abilities, because our children that are affected by autism are amazing. They have amazing gifts that they can give the world. And our job is just to kind of create that framework. But this whole concept of getting yourself to the point to where you are choosing to take yourself out of your comfort zone, knowing that this may not be the best experience in the entire world. So how did you get yourself there, or what were some of the key things kind of in your life that you can look back on and go, wow, okay, this is how I came to this place of independent choice?
I would say for me personally, I got to the point where I look back and I think to myself, I'm gonna try so many things that I have missed out on.
Interesting. Got it.
And of course you do it in an appropriate way that's age appropriate kind of thing too. Like talking to people, or talking to girls or something like that. It's or that, or maybe even try to let loose and have fun at recess. Or it's like, of course, when you're out of school, not recess, but
right.
but on a playground,
play,
but play on a playground, and it's like, of course, you can still be an adult and still enjoy the swing sets, and
sure,
and it's like have those experiences to yourself, kind of thing too. There's that, and maybe even try some new. Things like going back with the arcade. It's like I used to think pinball was very chaotic back then too, because everything was going all over. But then I chose to go to the pinball museum because I wanted to challenge all of my senses all together. I was at that point where I wanted to push the senses to the limits. Push it to where I don't want to have some episode or something like that
right,
too.
Right,
yeah. It's like we talked about the meltdowns and episodes and nuclear testing facilities and all that kind of stuff.
right.
But that was kind of the main reason why, is because I wanted to test my limits and try new things. See what I can. See what I can, just see what I can, what I'm capable of, I guess I can say. And folks out there can do the same thing, to see what they are capable of. It may not be overnight, it may not be the next week, but eventually there will be a time where they want to, go out there and say, I want to go to a race car show. And you may try it, and it may fail, it may not fail, but gotta celebrate the tries. That's why we always believe that concept too. We do things, and also we try things too. It's like try, fail, but never stop trying. It's like, for these kind of things too. It's like there are people out there with autism that generally do want to go to a basketball game. It's basketball may be their favorite thing. It's like they know the information and the drafts and the players and all that kind of stuff, and they. For those that enjoy basketball, they really want to go to a basketball game. Front seats, and enjoy the action. Enjoy the action with the thunderous dribbling of the balls and all that wonderful chaos. But they have to work for it. They have to try, and if it's they can. You could at least celebrate for even getting into the doors, kind of thing too. So it's always those small tiny steps that that people can work on, concept too.
Yeah,
and that's to push themselves out of their comfort zone.
Yeah. That's such a good point too, because even if you just make it through the steps to the stadium and maybe you don't watch the game, at least that's a win, right? That's just one step closer, to being able to actually do that activity. And so really, in review and wrap up, on the topic of food, it really is introducing similar foods that are
Textures,
taste,
and then going further. It's like it's still chicken, but it's a casserole this time.
Yeah.
For example.
It's a good point. Yep, exactly. So it's a switch in texture, but not in taste.
Right.
So, and you're going to have to experiment around with it, as well. On the topic of food as well, and we cover this in other the food related videos as well. But just a side note, it does take time, and we want to make sure that our children have appropriate nutrition. So we would supplement by putting, protein powders, vitamins, those kinds of things. Sprinkle it in the batter, sprinkle it in wherever you can. Swedish pancakes, hide it wherever you can. Because we want to make sure that our children have appropriate nutrition, as well as making sure that the foods that they're eating are also allowing them to be able to void and those things as well, because that just has a significant impact on, just our own health and stimulus. If their bodies are unable to process the food correctly or void the food correctly, then that creates a whole nother set of issues that has to get dealt with before we're even talking about getting out of your comfort zone. You've got to actually be comfortable in your existing zone in order to get out of the comfort zone, right? And so, some of those are, just base issues that need to get taken care of, as well. And then the other thing is, developing a plan. Whether that's, again, we found, with Tyler, just pictures worked great. Sometimes it was verbal, but a lot of times it was visual. To just say, hey, here's the plan, here's the map, here's the route, here's what it looks like, here's the things we're going to see, here's pictures of the place that we're going to go to, this is what the building looks like, this is what interior looks like, all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when I was just starting out as a keynote speaker, we used to tour around the building to see what to expect, kind of thing too. And these days I don't really mind as much, but honestly, it's still kind of fun just to see what goes on. I don't know. Maybe it's just more of a personal thing to me and such, but it's like I'm a lot better these days. But to me, it's kind of just fun, just quiet building, surround, get the interior going, and the atmosphere. It feels good. It's kind of a fun little, I guess you could say, like a little bit of a warm up of what goes on too. It's for these things, and so that's why it's like don't have to be a kid to go through these kind of things. yeah. And what Tyler's referring to is that early on in his speaking career, because he gets invited across the country to speak at different venues, and we would always make sure we were in there in advance. Typically it was a day. Now it's different. Now sometimes it's just hours because of Tyler's travel schedule. But we would prep, and we would prep, hey, here's where you're going to speak. Here's your microphone. Here is what the auditorium looks like. Here's what acoustics are. Here's air conditioning. Here's what the sounds are, right? And again, what was fascinating about it too is we would say, oh yeah, well, you're going to speak in a school gymnasium, or oh, hey, you're going to speak in an auditorium, or you're going to be in a conference center. But every one of those auditoriums and cafeterias and conference centers and stages, they all look, amphitheaters, they all look differently. And so Tyler's context was different, literally for years, until he can start kind of putting them all together. And that was part of the comfort zone, thing. I used to think that every gymnasium was exactly the same, or a school thing, back in back in Bainbridge Island kind of stuff too. It's
Yeah.
I know it's silly, but I mean that's what I thought back then and stuff. But nowadays it's like, oh, these are just more diverse. It's like still serve the same purpose, but just looks differently and feels differently.
And even then also too, a speaking engagement. Again, we have come through this age of COVID. All of a sudden, speaking engagements transferred to online. Then as well, and that was a whole different context, right? As we built studios out and had different sets and microphones and all of that.
Absolutely.
Again, was just that stretched your comfort zone. Because you like to engage with people while we were engaging online, and so
I do.
Whole different set.
Yeah, I do enjoy being on stage. I used to be a performer back in school and stuff. And, but of course, sure, I do more serious work when it comes to being on stage. But yeah, I mean that's personally my comfort zone. It's what's interesting too is that a lot of folks say that there's nothing comforting about, or nothing comfortable about going on stage because you're in front of a bunch of people and of course, but everyone's kind of different. To me personally, I don't know. Every time you're on stage, it feels. It's comforting to me. It's up there. It's just putting on a good show. It's that's my comfort zone. And when you're at that comfort zone, you become in the zone when you're speaking. If you look at it that way.
Yeah, it's good. Well, and the ability to help so many different people too. It's just it's super cool.
Thanks.
So again, thank you very, very much for being able to take some time, talk about how some strategies that you can use to help your child or, young adult or adult to be able to just stretch and just get out of the comfort zone. I mean, again, even if you're typically developing, I mean, we all have challenges, to say, hey, we need to stretch ourselves, but it's well worth it because you can create a very, very rich life, help your child understand how to get to that point to where they are making the intentional choice to say, hey, I am going to do this, even knowing that I may not enjoy it or the consequence may not be exactly what I thought. And again, of course, making good choices. That's good. We have lots of programs on that too.
Of course.
But it is challenging, that as well. And again, Tyler, thanks so much for bringing this as a topic.
Absolutely.
And again, we'll have multiple videos on this as well that even do deeper dives on strategies that you can use. But even if you could just take away those 2 or 3 little strategies and start implementing them now, that will again really start to create this amazing, hopefully very independent life for your child.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for. So so get out there, get out of your comfort zone, and at least give it a try. And even if it ends up not the results that you expected, at least you gotta celebrate for trying it to get out of your comfort zone. And then if you want to try it again next week or next month or even the next year. And that goes with just about everything. So just get out there. Maybe whatever that is that's out of your comfort zone may not be as terrifying as you thought.
Yeah.
Never know unless you give it a try.
For sure. So again, thank you very, very much for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you on our next program, which will also be on some pretty amazing topics as well. So in the meantime, go out and create a fantastic life for yourself and for your child that's affected by autism. We'll look forward to serving you in the future.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to serving you in the future.
Yeah.